Family members who claimed their relatives were killed during the 2020 nationwide ENDSARS protest against police brutality are demanding full implementation of the Lagos State Judicial Panel Inquiry report. It comes as activists plan a memorial march of protest on Thursday in Lagos. Arise News correspondent Oba Adeoye spoke with some of these families and other victims in Ikeja.
These young Nigerians took part in the ENDSARS protest of 2020, which called for the disbandment of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the Nigerian Police, popularly known as SARS. Today, they have converged on Ikeja, the capital of Lagos, to kickstart the second anniversary of the nationwide demonstrations. They are joined by family members of some victims of the protest who claim that their relatives were killed by soldiers brought to the scene of the protest. Some of them say they could not find the bodies of their relatives till date, despite all efforts to retrieve them.
He got missing since then. He hasn't been found because he was present at the Lekki toll gate. So he was affected by the shooting, which took him away. And since then till now, we haven't been able to find him, not the cops, nothing. So it has really been difficult for I and my family.
So we now take the body, go to this mortuary at General Hospital. So when we reach General Hospital, they already registered us. So when the security man go inside, there's no space to put the body. So we now take it again, go to Oyimbo, St. Paul mortuary.
She is actually the mother of one of the victims of ENDSARS protest. And name? Victor Sondiba, and unfortunately, up to today, we've not seen Victor. We've not seen the corpse.
Ayoyinka Oni, who speaks for the group and the families, presented a 5-part demand for the government to act on.
We just demand that the federal government of Nigeria respect the dead and heal the wounds it inflicted on the nation by accepting responsibility, for this, acts. Release of every person incarcerated over the ENDSARS protests. Aware that there are many more, thus we demand the immediate release and dropping of all charges against every ENDSARS victims already identified as being incarcerated for no just cause. Compensation of all ENDSARS victims and family of those killed. Full implementation of reports of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry.
Oni, who believes in the popular statement that justice delayed is justice denied, also presented to the journalists family members of some protesters who were reportedly killed by soldiers at the Lekki toll gate. At least 3 families say they lost a member during the protest. The pictures of the deceased were presented to the journalists.
They came down from the van just shooting. Some were shooting up, some were shooting straight.
And I saw blood over here. That is when I was, wow, this is serious. As I came here to kill people for real. So, and I try to help the person. Maybe we'll be able to stand. Immediately I stood up, I helped him. He could not stand very well. I wanted to go back on the floor to sit down. That is how I was shot on my chest. I shot on the chest and the bullet pierced and came out from the back.
This young man here says he was shot by a soldier at a close range at the Lekki toll gate. After several weeks at the hospital, his right leg was amputated. Today, he walks with the support of a prosthetic leg.
One good thing that I like about the current disposition is that at least the youths are now more political than before. Before we were more political. Our people say, I just want to make it or I want to japa. That is the 2 options, the Nigerian youths. But you have to participate and try to hold government to account. That is the important thing about this Sarasoke thing.
The ENDSARS protest, which took place for some days in the month of October 2020, came to a crescendo on Tuesday, the 28th of October, when arms-bearing security agents dispersed the protesters at the toll gate and in several other places across the nation. While many protesters insist that some persons were killed, the government says nobody died, even with the report of a judicial panel of inquiry set up by the government, which aligns with the claims of the protesters. Oba Adeoye, Rice News, Lagos.
All right, a lot to talk about on this, Dr. Abati. It's been a seminal moment for Nigeria.
Okay, well, to the extent, it seems to me, that this is the second anniversary of the ENDSARS protest. The ENDSARS protest was about police brutality, principally. It was also about youth rebellion. Nigerian youths across the nation, not just in Lagos, saying that this country cannot continue like this. You cannot have a unit of the police force behaving like rogues. And they call for an end to the special armed robbery squad of the Nigerian police. And they expressed themselves across the nation on October 19, October 20. In fact, the protestation started from October 10 to 2020. And it went on, and it, reached the climax, the apogee, on October 20, 2020. Simply to say that Nigeria requires a responsible police force, not a police force that will kill people, not a police force that will engage in extrajudicial killing, not a police force that will act in contravention of the enabling laws. And the youth of Nigeria then, including a group of young women who led, the process in Lagos, including our own, some of our own members in-house here, who out of principle said, no, this country cannot be organized like this. I don't want to mention names. They went out there, they raised funds. We had our protest at the Lekki toll gate, and there were 5 demands. Those demands indicated in that report include the fact that there should be justice for all persons who have been killed extrajudicially by the Nigerian police force. 2, that in fact the salaries of policemen should be increased. They even argued for the welfare of policemen. 3, that the obnoxious anti-people special armed robbery squad, should be disbanded. 4, that there should be psychological evaluation and retraining for policemen. And 5, of course, that there should be compensation for those who died as a result of extrajudicial killing. The federal government of Nigeria at the time had a committee led by Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the vice president. And we were told that that committee decided that every state government should set up a judicial panel of inquiry. Some states obliged, some did not. But in terms of performance, we saw concrete performance and response from the Lagos state government. The Lagos state government set up a committee, compensation was offered, depositions were taken, and we had an idea. Some states didn't even bother. About 11 states did not even bother. In other states, yes, the processes were in place, but till today, we don't know what the report is. So, 2 years later, the question is this. As raised yesterday in a conference, in the press conference by the ENDSARS, NGOs, CSOs, trying to review the situation. The questions are as follows. Number 1, what has been done 2 years later? The police promised at the time that they were going to do evaluation, psychological evaluation. SARS will be disbanded. Yes, SARS was disbanded. The psychological evaluation, till today, we don't know the number of lunatics, madmen, who are wearing uniform and calling themselves Nigerian policemen. Nobody has told us. It's a question that should be asked. What is the outcome of that psychological evaluation? 2, The Nigerian police force said they had disbanded Special Armed Robbery Squad in all formations of the police in the country. But has that solved the problem? After that, we have seen instances also of Nigerian policemen brutalizing people, killing people, engaging in extrajudicial killing. There are people who are taking this talk. So it's not as if there has been an improvement in terms of the relationship between the Nigerian police force and the Nigerian people. That in itself is a problem. Number three, we were told only yesterday by the federal government of Nigeria and the appropriate authorities that it was only after 2 years that the federal government was getting the report of the investigations. And the federal government now is saying, okay, compensation should be paid in some states and all of that. 2 years after. When we complain about negligence, about inefficiency, about the disconnect between government and the people, the way this matter has been treated is a colossal, frantic, observable illustration of what has happened. That's number three. Number four, one of the demands of the ENDSARS protest is that persons who were detained should be released. Up to now, we heard yesterday that there are persons who were detained, who were arrested, who are still in detention. They have not been released. I think the judiciary should weigh in this regard and ensure that anybody that was detained on account of the protests of 2022 should be released, of 2020 should be released 2 years after. The statute books does not allow you to detain anybody before beyond 24 hours. The law says in section 36, dealing with fair hearing, in extenso, that such a person should be charged to court within 24 hours. So the Nigerian government has no right detaining people for 2 years. There were some other persons who, on account of that protest, their personal accounts, bank accounts, were frozen, and which have remained frozen up to now. No, that's a perfect instance of government breaking the law. We can't have a situation whereby government routinely breaks the law. You can't freeze people's bank accounts, and you do so with impunity. So 2 years after ENDSARS, it's an occasion to cut them out, to call the CBN that gave the directive out to unfreeze those bank accounts, because it is unfair. In fact, it is illegal within the purview of the Constitution of Nigeria. Finally, I would like to say, well, our commiserations to the families that lost their beloved ones in the course of that protest. Nobody should die because they express an opinion. Nobody should be killed because they have given, they have tried to protest about omissions within the Nigerian state. Those omissions have not disappeared. Those omissions still are written large. And the Nigerian youths who are saying, we want a different country, because that was a youth-led protest. They have not given up. They are still expressing their anger. And the population of Nigeria is predominantly youthful. Young people constitute the majority in this place. We are not like Japan, where you have a majority of the people being old people. Or maybe, which other country is that? China? But here, the demographics is predominantly youthful. And young people of Nigeria, they have a voice in this matter. And they should be listened to. Not when they misbehave on Twitter. I have an objection to the behavior of some young people on social media. But when they make legitimate demands, as they did in 2020, the Nigerian government should take them seriously to realize that they represent the future, not the past. That's my point.
2010-20, a day we'll never forget in Nigeria's history. A day where the young, oppressed people of Nigeria only demanded for a better life for themselves. A day where the young tech icons of Nigeria only demanded that it was enough for them to be brutalized by police just for carrying a laptop that they used to code and make Nigeria proud. A day where a lot of Nigerian young people said enough was enough to the brutality of police that was supposed to protect them. But now, the police has even become the enemy. It was a day where Nigerians were saying, it's just enough of all of this ordeal where young people are arrested and they are taken to different police formations and they are extorted of so much money. But what did they meet? They met that same brutality that they protested against. 2010-2020 was a confirmation of all they protested against, that it truly existed, that there was police brutality, and the state doesn't care for its people. And the state should introspect. That was this the democracy we fought for, that we fought the military for, that we told the military that no, enough is enough, that we want a government for the people, by the people. But if the government for the people and by the people does not respect the wishes of the people, then how do we build a society that is lasting? On the 1st of October 2020, President Muhammadu Buhari gave a speech and he called the young Nigerians the Diamonds. 10 days after, those same Diamonds went out to protest and nobody listened to them. 10 days after, on the 20th, a lot of those Diamonds were cut short. That's the country we've built, isn't it? We forget in a hurry that the voice of the young people rings so loud in this country that the new age of young people we know in Nigeria today didn't even know about the military government. In fact, close to 40% of them were not born as of 2005. Can you imagine that? It is one of the youngest countries, if not the youngest in the world. And guess what? We are still going to have more of them. Because at the end of the year or next year, we'll have added extra 5 more million to this population of young people. So they never saw the military. In the next 5 years, if you tell the same young people that there was once a return to democracy and we had Olusegun Obasanjo as president, they never witnessed Olusegun Obasanjo's presidency or Yar'Adua's presidency, because when you look at it, as the age keep moving on, they were not born at that time. Most of the Nigerians you see on the streets today were born in the early 2000s. That's to mean something. So what do you do to young people like that? You listen to them. I know there must be a disconnect between the older ones in the 60s and the 70s and the younger ones. But how do you bridge a disconnect of a generation you don't understand? You listen to them. You listen to them sometimes in their faults, but also you listen to their silence. You listen to their words. You listen to their agitations and their protestations. But did we listen enough to them before we used force on them on that day? No. We want a country that can work for old and young people. But we should not forget that it's a country for young people, because they are more. And they want jobs, they want possibilities, they want a new life. And that's why these elections matter to them, and we encourage them to come out to vote. But most importantly, as we all listen to each other and we have a national memorial and introspect, we should remember the prayers of our anthem that says, "O God of creation, direct our noble cause. Guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know. Love and honesty to grow, and living in just and true. Great lofty heights we can attain together when we build a nation where peace and justice shall truly reign." But the question is, in building a nation where peace and justice shall reign, we must listen to the young ones in Nigeria. We must listen to their agitations. We must listen to their not well articulated ideas as you adults will think. We must listen to them when they feel weak. Yes, they'll never understand how to present themselves, and that's why they're in evolution. But for a nation where peace and justice should reign, the state must care for its own and take responsibility. Mistakes have been made, people have been hurt. We must come together and start the process of national healing and renewal.
And in doing that, the only state that has been diligent in giving account has been the Lagos State government.
Yes.
I hope other states, including those ones in parts of the country that refuse to do the audit of that protest, will still come forward and give us concrete information about what they did.
Yes.
Because the charge from the federal government, well, not necessarily from the federal government, from the Nigerian people, was that that protest occurred, not just in Lagos, in other parts of the country, and that state governments should try to meet the people. Some states just said it was not important. You will recall that at that time, the whole protest was ethnicized along ethnic regional lines.
Yeah.
There were states that said, no, this was not about police brutality. Our own concerns are different, and it's only the Southerners that are complaining. It is important to note, 2 years later, that we are all in this together. Whether it is police brutality, or it is flooding, or it is the future of Nigeria, people who always use ethnicity to play politics, they wrongfoot the country, they upend everybody, they cause crisis that is unnecessary. And I think that part of the review process, part of the reflection, part of the stock taking should include looking back, looking forward, and maybe it's the civil society organizations that will do that for us, to remind us that in the struggle over police brutality, extrajudicial killing, injustice, inequity, there were persons who facilitated it by their own omissions. And such persons or states will need to be called out as we remember the tragedy that occurred 2 years ago, including those people who worked against the interests of the Nigerian people and the young people of Nigeria who simply asked, we cannot continue like this.
Profound words, Dr. Abati, profound words. May we find healing and strength in this dark times.